I had just dropped my husband off at the airport when my 8-year-old son, Liam, suddenly grabbed my hand so hard it broke the skin around my nail. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. "Mom, we can't go home. Dad said tonight you and I will disappear, and he has to go far away so no one will suspect him." My heart stopped. I knelt down, held his little shoulders, and tried to steady the breath breaking apart in my chest. He had never lied, never trembled like this. But what made my spine turn cold wasn't Liam's words. It was the tone notification from my husband's text. "Go home as soon as you're done. Tonight is very important." Important? Important for whom? And for what? I realized this was no longer a normal day. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I am Avery Morgan, recently turned 58, living in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, a place I once believed held nothing but peace, late afternoon sunlight, and the sound of children playing in the cul-de-sac. I had just dropped my husband Darius at the departure terminal of Charlotte Douglas Airport. He said it was only a 2-day business trip, one of the many he had taken over the past few years. I held Liam's hand, planning to head back to the parking lot, go home, heat up the chicken soup still sitting in the pot, and try to finish off a long day. But Liam's eyes froze. My steps. He wasn't playful, wasn't chatty, wasn't talking about school like usual. He stood still as if a spotlight had pinned his fear in place, his tiny hand squeezing mine until it hurt. "I heard Dad talking on the phone this morning," Liam whispered, staring at the floor as if trying to recall every word. "Dad said he needs to clear the house, no more obstacles, so we can start over." I listened, but couldn't make sense of it. Each word felt like a rock sliding down a mountain, crashing into the next, sending a violent rumble through my chest. Liam had never said anything like this. He was a sensitive child, observant, but never one to make things up. I wanted to reassure him, to believe he misunderstood, but the fear in those brown eyes wasn't something an 8-year-old could fake. I tried to smile, though my voice shook slightly. "You must have misheard, Liam. Your dad makes work calls all the time." He shook his head immediately, sharp, decisive, painful enough to make my heart clench. "No, Mom, I heard right. Dad said tonight you and I will disappear. Dad said he has to go far away so no one will suspect him." My chest burned as if someone had poured boiling water inside it. I opened my phone by reflex, and that moment sent a chill through me. Darius's text had just arrived. "Go home as soon as you're done. Tonight is very important." Important? Important for whom? Important for what? I tried to swallow, but my throat felt packed with dust. For months I had felt something was off with Darius, but I pushed it aside, like a woman trained her, whole life to endure, to keep a marriage steady, the way women of my generation were taught to preserve a family. He started locking his phone, coming home late, blaming endless meetings, strange calls in the middle of the night that he took outside on the porch, whispering, his hand trembling, though he'd smile thinly at me. "Don't worry, it's work." I wanted to ask Liam more, but my throat wouldn't let sound out. I squeezed his hand and pulled him toward the parking lot. I could not let anyone in the airport see how badly I was shaking. "Liam," I said once we were inside the car, "you remember everything clearly?" He nodded without hesitation. "Dad also said they have to do it quickly tonight, because starting tomorrow, Dad will be free." Free. That word struck my mind like a metal bell. I started the car but didn't drive toward home. By an instinct I didn't know I had, I turned the opposite way onto the highway. I needed space. I needed time. I needed to know whether I was afraid of something real or scaring myself. But then my phone lit up again and again. Darius sent 3 more messages. "Are you on your way home yet? Why aren't you answering? Don't drive around. Go straight home." The tone of those texts was wrong, urgent in a way that made the back of my neck prickle. Darius was usually indifferent toward me. He had forgotten anniversaries, birthdays, everything. He never cared whether I got home on time. I began to tremble. "Mom," Liam whispered, "if we go home tonight, you won't wake up." I had lived long enough to know when a child's fear was real, and a mother's fear, sharp as a knife, forces belief whether she wants it or not. I turned into a residential street 3 blocks from our house. The oak trees cast shadows across the windshield. The quiet was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. I shut off the lights, pulled the sunshade down, and looked at Liam. "Baby, I believe you, but we need to see with our own eyes to be sure." "No, Mom." Liam grabbed my arm immediately. "Don't go near the house. Dad isn't Dad anymore." I didn't know which hurt more, that sentence or the possibility that I had slept beside someone who saw our lives as disposable. I exhaled slowly. "We won't go inside. We'll stay far, just to observe, okay?" Liam hesitated, then nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. I held his hand while driving the long way around to the back street, where the roof of our house could be seen through the trees, but our car stayed hidden. I parked under 2 tall pines, a patch of complete darkness, just a few hundred feet from home, but far enough to avoid being spotted. I turned off the engine, turned off everything. Silence swallowed us. "We'll wait here for a bit," I whispered. "I just want to be sure. Then we'll figure out our next step." Liam leaned against me, trembling. I wrapped my arm around him, holding him close. I once believed I knew everything about life, marriage, safety, trust, but sitting in that old SUV on a dark street behind our house, I felt every belief in my life begin to fracture. Minutes ago, I was an ordinary wife, an ordinary mother. Now, I was a woman praying that what I was about to witness wasn't real, but my intuition, the one I had buried for years, told me things were worse than I imagined. I looked at the clock. 10:04 p.m. Wind brushed against the car windows. Liam held his breath, staring out into the night, his eyes wide as if trying to pierce the darkness for answers. I did not know that in just a few minutes, my life and my son's life would change forever. What I was about to see would not only destroy the home I had built, but reveal the true face of the man I had once vowed to spend my life with. And this was only the beginning. The darkness swallowed the quiet street where I parked. I sat still, letting the cold night air seep through the cracked window, numbing my skin. From the back seat, Liam leaned gently against my shoulder. He didn't speak, but I could feel his quick, shallow breaths. A child's fear never lies. It's so real, adults should feel ashamed for not believing sooner. And in that heavy silence, memories reopened like pages, sharp and unforgiving. I began recalling the recent months, the strange signs that appeared piece by piece, like shards of glass I had stepped over without looking. Darius used to be carefree with his phone, leaving it in the kitchen all day, but recently he changed passwords constantly, even tilting the screen away from me so I couldn't see. When I jokingly asked, "What are you hiding?" he snatched the phone from me so fast it startled me. His eyes darkened for a split second before returning to their usual calm. "Avery, don't pry into my work. It's not good for you." "Not good for me? Why me?" I laughed it off, like a wife who had learned to keep peace at all costs. But that sentence stayed with me like a thorn under skin. Then one day, he placed a stack of documents in front of me. "Sign these. Tax laws changed. Putting all assets under one name is easier." I stared at him. We didn't have a huge estate, but it wasn't small. The house, the SUV, my retirement account, Liam's savings fund. "Why in your name?" I asked. Darius smiled easily, patting my shoulder like I was a child. "I do everything for this family, Avery. You trust me." Trust? I had trusted him for 10 years. Trusted until trust turned blind. I signed, not out of confidence, but out of exhaustion. When you live with someone who dominates every conversation, sometimes you sign just to avoid another argument. A few weeks later, Darius announced, "I increased your life insurance policy to $2.8 million, just to be safe." Safe. He said it casually, like he was talking about an oil change or checking the gutters. I stood, frozen on the kitchen step, dish towel in hand, water dripping to the floor. Why me? Why not his policy? Why that amount? But again, I stayed silent. Women my age often often choose peace over confrontation. I buried the discomfort deep inside, until tonight, when that discomfort returned as a warning. Liam had tried to warn me earlier. He told me about strange men standing outside our home at night, one wearing a baseball cap, watching the house until he noticed movement inside. I dismissed it. Probably a delivery driver, sweetheart. Liam shook his head. But he stayed a long time, Mom, like he was waiting. I should have listened. 3 months ago, during dinner, Darius suddenly said, "Avery, I'm not saying this to scare you, but if anything ever happens, don't dig." I thought he meant risky business deals. Now, sitting in the shadows of this side street, that sentence sounded like a threat. Don't dig? He expected silence. I looked at Liam, my 8-year-old boy with messy brown hair and wide, alert eyes, who saw what I refused to see. The man I married was not the man I thought he was. I held his hand, cold and trembling. "Tell me again," I whispered. "You're sure about everything you heard?" Liam nodded firmly. "Dad said they would do it tonight. Dad said he has to go far away so the police won't suspect him. Dad said, we're a burden." I closed my eyes. A burden. 2 words that cut deeper than any knife. The clock read 10:21 p.m. We sat silently. Only the wind through the trees and our breathing filled the air. Each minute stretched painfully long. Liam stayed close, his eyes fixed on our house. He looked older than 8 in that moment. Fear ages children in ways adults can't understand. Darius had stopped texting, but the silence was worse than the messages. It felt like the quiet before an explosion. Then headlights swept across the trees. Liam and I stiffened. A black SUV, no front license plate, crept into the neighborhood. Not a neighbor's car, not a delivery truck, not anything familiar. It moved slowly, as if counting each house. Then it stopped, right in front of ours. Liam gripped my hand until it burned. "Mom, they're here." My breath caught in my throat. In that moment, every faint sign I had ignored snapped together into a complete picture. A pitch black, freezing picture. Darius had been preparing this for a long time. Every detail, every signed paper, every action, every word, all of it led to tonight. And when the 2 dark-clothed figures opened the SUV doors, I knew that if it hadn't been for Liam's whisper at the airport, we would have become 2 names in an investigation report. Mother and child died in a house fire caused by faulty wiring. They didn't know we were watching. They didn't know Darius's plan had veered off course. But I knew, with a painful cutting clarity, my life would never be the same again. The black SUV stopped in front of my gate as if it had found the exact address for a mission planned long ago. I lowered myself into the seat, wrapping my arms around Liam's head, my heart pounding like hammer blows inside my chest. In the thick darkness, both car doors opened at the same time. 2 men stepped out. They were dressed entirely in dark clothing, hoods pulled low over their faces. They didn't act sneaky like people trying to break in. No, they moved like men doing familiar work. Precise, instructed, routine. One of them walked straight to the front door, and then the thing that made me almost throw up on the spot happened. He took a key from his jacket pocket and opened my front door. No picking the lock, no forcing anything, no hesitation. He simply inserted the key, turned it, and walked in like a legal homeowner. My nails dug into my own skin hard enough to sting. I swallowed back the rising nausea. Only 3 people had keys to my house. Me, Darius, and the spare key in his desk drawer, a place where I once heard him warn Liam, "Never touch this." There was no doubt anymore. Darius had given them the key. I looked at Liam through the darkness. His face was so pale it looked drained of blood. He gripped my hand, his voice trembling. "Mom, those are the 2 men from this morning. I recognize the way they stand." I didn't have time to ask anything else. Flashlights began sweeping inside the house, cold beams cutting across the windows, sliding along the walls like blades. I shivered. Never had my house, where I once hung our wedding photo, where I cooked late dinners, look so terrifying. Just a few minutes later, a strange smell drifted out. At first it was faint, like burning plastic or motor oil, but it grew stronger, acrid, sharp, heavy, the smell of something flammable. I inhaled and nearly panicked. It was the same smell I'd caught when a neighbor cleaned out their storage using paint thinner, a smell that clings to the throat, raising goosebumps. The feeling of standing at the edge of a nightmare tugged me downward. What are they doing? I whispered to myself, though the answer had already flashed through my mind, clear and brutal. Liam whispered, his voice shrinking. They're pouring something on the floor. Then the flashlights went out. A horrifying silence fell. I don't know how long each second lasted in that silence. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly hold the steering wheel. Then suddenly, a flare of orange light burst inside the house, like someone had lit a giant match. My mouth fell open, then a muffled pop. A burst of flames erupted in the living room, so bright I saw it reflected on Liam's face. Fire spread fast like it had been fed fuel, crawling across the carpet, licking the sofa, catching the curtains. Within seconds, my living room, where I had just drunk tea last night, became a roaring pit of fire. I opened the car door by instinct. No, my house! But Liam grabbed my leg, pulling me back into the seat, screaming in panic. "Mom, you'll die! Don't go out!" His cry hit me like a slap, snapping me back. If I ran out there, if I tried to go inside, I would burn to death at the doorway. I wrapped my arms around him, holding his head against me. "It's okay, babe, it's okay." But I was the one shaking uncontrollably. The fire spread too fast, far too fast to be an accident. Within minutes, it swallowed the living room. Black smoke poured out of the windows, thick enough to smother the whole house. Small explosions followed, wood cracking, glass breaking, pieces of the ceiling falling. The flames surged as if assisted. This wasn't dry wood. This wasn't negligence. What had those men poured on the floor? How much? How long before we arrived? Neighbors started shouting. Porch lights flicked on across the street. Someone ran out with a phone to call 911. I watched the scene as if my legs no longer belonged to me. I loved that house. I had hung every picture on the wall, hand-placed every decal in Liam's room. All our memories were in there, but the fire didn't care. It climbed the stairs, then began licking into the second floor, where Liam's bedroom was. My whole body went cold. If I had listened to Darius and brought Liam home early, if we had gone to bed, if Liam hadn't said anything, we would have been up there, and we wouldn't have escaped. We watched the house collapse piece by piece through the windshield, silent, absolutely silent, quiet enough that I could hear my child's heartbeat. Then my phone vibrated. A familiar notification chimed in the smoke-filled air. I picked it up as if holding hot coals. A message from Darius. Just a few words. "Sleep well, you two. Text me when you get home." It felt like a cold blade plunged into my chest. He knew we should be asleep. He believed we were inside. He believed the fire would take care of the rest. And now he was sending a message to create the perfect alibi. The caring, innocent husband. I read the text 3 times and still couldn't believe his audacity. I wanted to scream, throw the phone into the windshield, call him and ask if he had any conscience left. But I couldn't do anything. Liam looked up at me, eyes full of tears. "What did Dad say, Mom?" I couldn't lie to him anymore. I handed him the phone. He stayed silent for a very long time, then whispered, "Dad knew we would be sleeping in the house tonight." I pulled him into my arms. I couldn't hold back anymore. Tears poured out uncontrollably. But even in that moment, one truth stood sharp in my mind. No doubts, no excuses, no hopeful denial left. Darius tried to kill us. With planning, with calculation, with every step prepared. He wanted to start a new life without me, without Liam. He wanted freedom, wanted to erase his debts, wanted to live comfortably off my life insurance payout. And if Liam hadn't tugged my hand at the airport, if I hadn't listened, if I had driven home on time, then right now we would be lying inside that burning house. No breath, no voice, no chance. I watched the second floor collapse, the sound of splintering wood like a cry. Black smoke rose into the sky, and the flames reflected on the windshield, painting my face in red as if exposing the truth directly to me. That night, inside the darkness of the SUV, I knew I had stepped out of my old life. I was no longer the wife who tried to preserve happiness by staying silent. From now on, I had only one mission: protect Liam and uncover the truth Darius thought he had burned in those flames. When the second floor caved in, the cracking wood and shattering glass roared through the car windows. It felt like a part of me broke too. It wasn't just a house. It was my last 10 years. The photos, the blanket I crocheted for Liam when he was 3, the old handwritten letters from my parents, all turned to ash. Fire engine sirens grew louder, then flooded the neighborhood, red and blue lights flashing across the rearview mirror like a nightmare pulsing. Neighbors ran out. Some rushed toward the gate of my house, others recording, some covering their mouths in shock. I ducked low in my seat, pulling Liam's head down. "Don't look up, baby," I whispered. "No one can know we're here." He nodded, pressing his face into my shoulder. I felt his hot tears through my coat. My first instinct, like many Americans, was to call the police, to run to the firefighters and scream, "My husband did this! He tried to kill us!" But as soon as the thought appeared, the little bit of logic I had left crushed it. Darius was not a nobody. He was the successful man of the neighborhood, the guy who funded the local youth team, chaired church fundraisers, attended uptown Charlotte charity dinners. He had pictures with the police chief hanging at City Hall. He smiled in the local paper, labeled a proud black businessman of the region. And who was I? A middle-aged wife who had stayed home for years, recently working part-time at a small shop. No money, no power, no voice. I looked down at my phone. The only evidence I had was one message. "Sleep well, you two. Text me when you get home." That message, if presented, would be read as what? A husband checking on his family. Nothing more. And the testimony of an 8-year-old, Dad said we would disappear. Against Darius's expensive attorney and his polished reputation, I could already hear their argument. "Your Honor, this is simply a frightened child imagining things after a traumatic fire." I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. We had nothing. If I showed up now, Darius could flip the entire story, paint me as an unstable wife, imagining threats after losing her home. I had seen too many cases like that on the evening news. No, I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. I wiped my tears, turned fully toward the back seat, held Liam's shoulders, and made him look into my eyes. "Listen to me, Liam. From this moment on, we don't let anyone know we're alive. No neighbors, no friends, no one at all. Do you understand?" His lips trembled, but he still nodded. "I just need you," he whispered, "as long as you're here." That sentence squeezed my chest tight. I pulled him into my arms again, took a deep breath, then backed the car out of the dark space between the 2 pine trees. I had to get away before the fire truck lights swept toward where we were. I drove like someone sleepwalking, turning through familiar curves that suddenly felt strange tonight. I avoided the main roads, sticking to small streets, weaving through other neighborhoods. Charlotte at night was gentle like a tired animal. Warm porch lights, seasonal decorations, flags hanging by doorways, all of it the complete opposite of the panic rolling in my chest. Liam began to drift off in the back seat, his head nodding with each bump. The child had just escaped death less than an hour ago. No child should ever have to go through a night like that. I couldn't keep driving without a destination. I needed a place. I needed a name. I needed a hand I could hold when the world had just collapsed under my feet. And then, like someone flipped a switch in my mind, I remembered my father. Not the father of today. The father from years ago, before he died of a heart attack, before his knees gave out, before he sat in the recliner in my living room and said something I had laughed off at the time. "If one day you are truly in danger, go find Carlton Rao." Back then, I answered, "Dad, you watch too many detective shows." He laughed, but his eyes weren't joking. He opened his wallet, took out a small piece of paper with a phone number and 2 lines. Carlton Rao, attorney, and an address in the Midwood area. He folded it and pressed it into my hand. "I don't trust Darius," he said quietly. "I hope I'm wrong, but if one day something feels off, you call this. Don't ask much, just call." I had kept that paper in my wallet in the compartment I rarely touched. For years, every time I cleaned my wallet, I found it, shook my head, and said, "Dad worries too much." I never thought the day would come when that paper would be the only lifeline I had. Now, in the middle of the night, on an empty road, I switched on the car light and opened my wallet with shaking hands. Receipts, membership cards, old photos of Liam, and then, in a small back pocket, the yellowed paper. My father's handwriting was still clear, leaning slightly to the right. Carlton Rao, attorney with a phone number and an address. I stared at it for a long moment. I felt split in two. One half wanting to throw the paper away and pretend none of this had ever happened. The other half knowing that if I didn't dial this number, I might not live long enough to regret it. I chose the second half. My hands shook so badly I had to dial twice. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Each ring stretched out like a whole year. Just when I was about to hang up, a low, firm female voice answered. "Hello, Law Office of Rao." I stayed silent for a few seconds. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Hello, I'm Avery Morgan. My father is Dale Morgan. He used to... The other end went quiet for half a beat. Then the woman's voice sharpened, alert now. "Dale's daughter? You finally called." A short pause. "I'm Attorney Rao, Carlton Rao. Avery, where are you right now?" My heart pounded. My father didn't just talk to this woman once. He had prepared more than I realized. I'm driving near downtown, my house. My house just burned down. My son and I almost, I couldn't finish. The next words tangled into strangled sobs. She didn't comfort me, didn't gasp, didn't panic. Her voice stayed steady, as if she was used to calls made in desperation. "Listen to me, Avery. Are you alone?" "I'm with Liam, my son." "Is your husband there?" I swallowed hard, answering with a hoarse voice. "No, he's on a business trip out of state. He's the one who wanted us dead." Again, she didn't interrupt or judge. I heard the scratch of a pen on the other end, like she was taking notes. "All right, Avery, listen carefully. Drive straight to the address I'm about to text you. My office is in Midwood. Do not stop anywhere. Do not visit anyone. Do not tell anyone where you're going. Put your phone on silent and absolutely do not call your husband. Clear?" Her tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Yes, I understand. Good. I'll be waiting there. The door will be locked. Cameras are on. Ring the bell once. I'll open it. And Avery, yes, you did the right thing by calling. Dale would be proud of you. I burst into tears the moment the call ended. The road to Midwood felt longer than usual. I merged onto the interstate, then back into smaller roads, following the map's directions. Liam dozed in the back, clutching the stuffed dinosaur he took everywhere. Charlotte drifted past the windows like a slow film. Drive-through restaurants still lit, a few cars at gas stations, neon billboards flickering. No one knew that inside an old SUV passing through, there was a woman who had just lost her home and her husband. Not by death, but by truth. Midwood at night was quieter than I remembered. The area was full of old brick houses, small coffee shops, and family-owned stores. The GPS guided me to a 2-story red brick building on a corner with a tiny brass sign, Rao and Associates, Legal Counsel. I parked by the curb. It was close to midnight. The building wasn't flashy like the law offices on TV. Only a warm yellow light glowed from a frosted window on the ground floor. A camera pointed directly at the porch. The front door had 2 layers, a glass door with a steel latch inside and a heavy wooden outer door that looked sturdy enough to trust. All of that should have comforted me, but in the state I was in, it only made me feel like I was truly stepping into another world, the world my father had feared I'd one day face. I gently shook Liam. "Liam, wake up. We're here." He rubbed his eyes, looking around sleepily. "Where is this, Mom?" "A place where someone can help us." I took his hand and we climbed the steps together. My hand trembled as I pressed the doorbell. In less than 10 seconds, the lock clicked. The wooden door opened first, then the glass door inside. A woman in her early 60s stood there, dark brown skin, silver hair pulled back neatly, glasses perched on her nose. She wore a dark sweater and jeans, nothing like the polished attorneys on television, but her eyes, sharp, awake, steady, made me feel small, like a child. "Avery?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, that's me." She glanced at Liam, still clinging into my hand, then opened the door wider. "Come in, quickly. Tonight is not a night to stand outside." Inside, the office was warm, smelling of strong coffee and old books. Files lined the walls. Stacks of papers covered her desk. Nothing fancy, but orderly and solid. She locked the door, tapped something on a control box near the wall, probably the security system, and gestured, "Lay the boy on that sofa. There's a blanket there. He needs to sleep, and you sit here." I did as instructed. Liam curled up the moment he lay down, exhausted. I covered him with the blanket, smoothed his hair, then returned to the chair across from the desk. Attorney Rao sat, clasped her hands, and looked directly at me. "All right, Avery, start talking. From the beginning. Don't leave out anything, even if it seems small." I took a deep breath, and I talked. I told her about the constantly changing passwords, about the property transfer papers for tax convenience, about the life insurance policy raised to $2.8 million with the words, "just in case," about the strangers Liam saw outside, about the line, "if anything happens, don't dig," about the phone call Liam overheard this morning, the whisper, "tonight they will disappear." Then I told her about the airport, Liam's small hand squeezing mine until it bled, the decision not to go home, the black SUV, the key turning, the chemical smell, the flames bursting, and the final message, "Sleep well, you two." I didn't know how long I spoke. Some parts I had to stop to breathe, some parts broke into sobs, but she never interrupted. She listened, straight-backed, eyes steady, sometimes writing in her notebook. When I was done, the room fell silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking and Liam's slow breaths from the sofa. At last, Attorney Rao leaned back, exhaling long like she'd just finished assembling a puzzle she had suspected all along. "Your father had excellent instincts," she said slowly. "He came to see me about almost 4 years ago." I looked up, my heart jumping. My father came to see you." "Yes. He said he didn't trust your husband. He didn't have major evidence back then, just small things. The way Darius asked about your inheritance, the way he reacted when you wanted to go back to work. But Dale said, his exact words, 'I can't leave my daughter unprotected if something happens to me.'" She stood, walked to a short file cabinet, unlocked it, searched briefly, then pulled out a thick brown folder. She set it in front of me. On the cover, in handwriting, "Darius Morgan, confidential." Goosebumps rose along my spine. "Avery," Rao said, her voice dropping lower, "your father was right. I have a file on your husband." She paused, letting the words settle into the warm, coffee-scented room. "And I'm afraid this started much earlier than you think." The brown folder lay in front of me like it was glowing in the mixed smell of coffee and old paper. My fingers trembled on its edge. I had always thought my father was overly cautious, overprotective, but now, seeing the words, "Darius Morgan, confidential," I just wanted to lean back and ask the sky, "How long had you known, Dad?" Attorney Rao pulled her chair closer, placing her hand on the folder, her voice steady like sharpened steel. "Avery, before Dale passed away, he came to me. He said he felt something was wrong, even if he couldn't name it. And he gave me this, with instructions. When she needs it, give it to her." She opened the folder. Thick, aged papers, some yellowed. The smell reminded me of my father reading newspapers in his tiny study. She pulled the first page out and set it before me. The title made my chest tighten. "Financial Status Report. Darius Morgan." Not from a bank, not something he provided. This was from a private investigator. My father had hired someone to watch Darius. I stared at the page as if it were a mirror showing me the true state of my marriage. Columns of numbers, and it took me a few seconds to understand what I was reading. "This is debt?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "And hidden debt," Rao confirmed. "Not bank loans, not credit cards. This is gambling debt, debt from under-the-table dealings, debt paid in cash. Dale suspected it years ago, so he hired someone to follow him." She pointed to one line of notes. "Repeated short-term loans at Winston Club. total of $180,000. I felt as if someone had poured stones over me. Darius wasn't just passionate about betting, like he used to say. He was buried in it. Buried so deep he couldn't pull himself out. Many other pages detailed failed investments, shady transactions, and finally, the thing that made me go numb. 2 years of contact with a local crime group to take care of the burden. I lifted my head, my lips so dry I had to wet them with my tongue. A burden? That means... Rao looked at me for a moment, her gaze neither avoiding nor softening the truth. You and your son. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the chair. Liam was asleep on the sofa, blanket pulled to his chin, but just the thought of our names being called a burden made a burning pain run down my spine. Not because my husband wanted to kill me, but because he saw it as naturally as throwing away a broken object. I didn't know how long I was silent. When Rao continued, I realized my hands were clenched so tightly they had turned white. "This isn't all," she said, pulling out another stack of papers. "These documents track the money flow, especially the inheritance your mother left you." I leaned closer. That was the money I saved in our joint account, believing that spouses shouldn't hide things from each other. In the middle pages, it was written clearly, inheritance of $132,000, withdrawn in 19 transactions, completely gone in 18 months. My heart felt like it had been punched. "Oh my God," I whispered. "He spent every dollar." I remembered asking Darius several times why our joint account was lower than usual. He always had an answer ready. Home repairs, future investments, work expenses. I believed him. I believed him because trusting your husband feels natural. Rao closed the file and spoke slowly, firmly. When that money wasn't enough, Darius turned to the only thing left that he could convert into cash. Your life insurance policy, $2.8 million. She emphasized each word, was enough to clear the debt and start a new life with someone new. Without you, without Liam. I burst into tears. Not the choked sobs from sitting in the car watching my house burn. This time, the tears poured out like they had waited a long time to escape my chest. Betrayal isn't one stab. It's 1,000 tiny needles piercing every memory, every family dinner. Every night I stayed up sewing his loose buttons. Every moment he lifted Liam and called him the light of my life. All of it turned into smooth lies. I buried my face in my hands, my shoulders shaking. Liam, sensing something, stirred and opened his eyes. He saw me crying, jumped off the sofa and ran to me, wrapping his small but determined arms around my neck. "Mom, don't be scared. I'm here." That sentence, on that night, felt like a small hand gripping my soul tight. I held him close, kissing his hair. He didn't understand everything, but he sensed his mother's pain, and that made my anger burn hotter. Rao let us hold each other for a moment, then spoke. "Avery, now you need to stay calm and listen. You have a major advantage. You're alive, but that alone isn't enough to charge Darius. To end this, we need solid evidence. Actions, instructions, transactions, hired men. Everything must be strong enough to bring him to court without giving him room to turn it around." I wiped my tears, forcing my breath to steady. But where is the evidence? The fire burned everything. Rao shook her head. Not everything. Men like Darius are careful. They keep a portion for themselves in case the people they hired turn on them. In the old investigation notes, there was mention of a lock inside his desk. I cut her off, my heart tightening. "The third drawer, on the right. I've seen him lock it, but I never had the key. That could be where he kept documents about the people he contacted. Notes, cash transaction records, a secondary phone, anything. And just one of those things is enough to turn the whole case." I looked at Rao, my mouth dry. "But the house burned down. Fire burns wood faster than metal," she replied. "A small safe, a metal compartment, or a lockbox could still be intact, and even ashes can speak, Avery. People who stage a crime scene always leave mistakes. The issue is, we must get there before anyone else comes back to erase the evidence." Her meaning was so clear I felt nauseous. We had to go back to that pile of ashes. We had to find what Darius didn't have time to destroy. Liam was still holding my arm, watching me with worried eyes. I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to stay steady despite my racing pulse. "Rao, do you think we can do it?" She didn't answer right away. She folded the file, pushed it gently toward me like handing over a piece of fate. "Avery," she said, her voice low but strong, "you are not just a victim. You are a survivor. You know better than anyone what's being hidden. You escaped a death he was certain of. You still have your son. The two of you witnessed what no one else saw." She looked straight at me. "If anyone can pull the truth out of those ashes, it's you." I held Liam's hand, squeezing it lightly. Yes, I was alive, and I was no longer alone. That night, in the small office in Midwood, with the hum of the air conditioner and the thick smell of coffee, I understood what my father had probably known for years. To save my child, I had to face the fire, this time with the truth. And the truth was in the place I once called home. I couldn't sleep that night. Even though my body was exhausted, my mind felt stretched like a tight string. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames climbing the walls, the two men entering the house with a key, the message from Darius lighting up the screen. Each image made my chest seize. Rao didn't force me to rest. She only said, as she handed me a warm glass of water, "Avery, tomorrow night we go back. Tonight he's still busy pretending. Tomorrow night the men he hired will think everything is done." I nodded. We had only one chance to find the evidence. If Darius returned to the scene before we did, he would erase everything. The next night, right on time, we stood at the edge of the small forest behind the houses, where a dirt path ran behind the neighborhood. A path I used only when taking Liam to collect pine cones. Now it was an escape route, a re-entry route, the only route without cameras. Rao led the way, short but solid, her steps firm on the fallen leaves. I held Liam's hand. His hand was so cold I had to rub it to warm it. The thin moonlight through the trees made the path look dusted with silver. "Mom, are you sure it's safe?" Liam whispered. "It's not safe, sweetheart, but it's necessary." I squeezed his hand. He didn't say anything else, just walked closer to me. He'd grown up too much since that tragic night, too fast for an 8-year-old. We exited the trail and reached the fence behind my house. The floodlights from the firefighters were gone, and the police had left that morning. The house stood silent, blackened, burned down like an abandoned skeleton. The left wall had collapsed. Part of the roof had fallen in, exposing a large gap into the second floor. But just as Rao predicted, Darius's office on the second floor hadn't completely fallen. A corner of the room remained, though the walls were scorched. Rao scanned the area, whispering, "Let's go, no one's watching now." We followed the fence and slipped through the smallest break. The burnt smell in the wind made me dizzy. I didn't know how I managed to walk back into the place that had almost killed me and my son, but my feet kept moving. The kitchen door was mostly charred. The frame tilted, pieces of wood falling as I pushed it lightly. We stepped inside, crunching over broken tiles and thick ash. The kitchen had once been where I taught Liam to make pancakes. Now it was just a pile of black debris. "Move fast," Rao said. "We have 15 to 20 minutes." There was no staircase left to reach the second floor, but part of the railing near the window remained, and the metal hooks still clung to the burnt wall. Rao brought a small climbing strap, something I didn't know why she owned and didn't dare ask. She tied the strap to the remaining wood, tested it several times, then nodded. "I'll go first. Avery in the middle. Liam last. I'll pull him up. Don't look down." I had never felt as weak as I did climbing that broken railing. Each step took both mental and physical strength. Ash slid under my hands. Wind blew through the open roof, carrying the smell of burnt metal and wood, like the night before was still smoldering. When we reached the second floor, the office appeared like a ghost. Darius's desk was burned from the top down, but the lower portion survived. The wall behind it was pitch black, the floor covered in ash, and in the middle of that charred wall was something that made me shiver. Darius's safe had been exposed, the wooden covering burned away, but the keypad still intact. Another thing chilled me. I'd always thought that safe was the most secure thing in the house. Now it sat uncovered like evidence against its owner. Rao signaled for me to hurry. I looked at the numbers, my hand trembling. The one code Darius had ever used and confidently believed no one else knew was his birth date. I typed it silently. Click. The safe door opened. Inside wasn't much, but enough to take my breath away. Bundles of cash wrapped in rubber bands, several SIM cards for untraceable calls, a black burner phone charred on one corner but intact, debt documents, some with burned edges but mostly readable. Rao quickly gathered everything into the fireproof bag she brought, checking each item. "This is only part of it," she said. Darius definitely kept a backup somewhere else. Before I could react, Liam tugged my sleeve. "Mom, here." He pointed to the burnt floor. A square piece of wood sat slightly offset from the rest, easy to miss without looking closely. I knelt, brushed away the ash, and lifted the plank. Underneath was a hidden compartment. My heart tightened. All these years living with him, I never knew there was a secret space under his office. Inside were a rough, old brown leather notebook with lightly burned edges, a thick envelope filled with receipts and handwritten notes, a small memory card. Rao opened the notebook first. On the first page, Darius's familiar handwriting cut me like a blade. Plan. Resolve the burden before October. It felt like someone slapped me across the face. Every loving word, every promise, all looked like ash-covered lies now. Rao flipped through. The following pages listed service payments, initials of contacts, scheduled times for cleanup, deposit amounts, notes saying, "Make sure no evidence is left." My hands shook over the pages. Every stroke of ink pierced the last thin layer I used to shield him. He's just stressed. He's just different lately. He'll be better. No, he wasn't changing. He was revealing himself. Rao closed the notebook and looked at me, her gaze sharp but not cold. "This is exactly what we need." But just as she finished speaking, a sound froze my blood. The front door being shoved open, then heavy footsteps on the burned floor. "Someone's here," I gasped. Liam clung to my arm, trembling. Rao motioned for absolute silence, then whispered, "The cabinet over there, quick." We slipped into a half-burned wooden cabinet in the corner. Only half the door remained, but the darkness hid us well. Ash swirled as I pulled Liam close. Two male voices echoed, familiar ones. The same men who set the house on fire that night. The cops didn't find the bodies. The boss said to come back and check for anything left. No way, 2 people asleep inside, fire like that, they'd be gone. He said he's not convinced, told us to sweep the office again. The office. I let out a breath, my hand gripping Liam's shoulder so tightly, he turned his face up to me, as if trying to reassure me back. Their footsteps climbed the temporary stairs, the sound of breaking wood snapping under their weight. A beam of their flashlight swept across the room, only a few steps from the cabinet we were hiding in. I heard my heartbeat in my ears like a pounding drum. One of the men said, "Hey, the safe is open." "No way, we didn't touch it." "Someone got here first. Watch out. Maybe they're still alive." I held my breath. Rao stayed completely still like a statue. Liam pressed his face against my chest. One of the men's feet stopped right in front of the cabinet. I thought I was about to faint when, "Ah!" A loud scream came from the porch on the first floor. A woman's scream, sharp, chilling. Not the scream of someone in danger, but a scream meant to warn. The 2 men jerked back. "Someone's downstairs! Go!" Their footsteps pounded down the stairs. The door slammed, then silence. Rao slowly cracked the cabinet door open. She was breathing hard, but her eyes were still razor sharp. "Move, now, they'll come back." We rushed across the room and climbed down the rope just like we had come. I lowered Liam first, my arms numb, but my mind focused on only one thing. We had to get out. When my feet hit the ground, I turned to look at the house one last time. The blackened walls stood like witnesses to a crime, and also the place where the truth had been pulled out of the ashes. Rao grabbed my arm, urging, "Run!" We ran through the trail and into the trees. Behind us, an engine started, and headlights swept across the area as if searching for something. If Rao hadn't yelled to distract them, Liam, we might not have had a chance to escape. When we reached the parking lot where she had left her car, I leaned against the door, gasping. Liam wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing his face into my stomach as if to make sure I was really still here. Rao started the engine, her voice strangely calm. "Avery, tonight you found something most people never get the chance to hold. The truth." She glanced at the bag holding the notebook, the phone, the papers. "And this truth will save both." I turned to look out the window, toward the pile of ashes swallowed by darkness, and I knew. From that moment on, I was no longer the woman who ignored the signs. I became the person who would peel apart every layer of lies Darius had built, using exactly what he left behind in that secret compartment he thought I would never find. By the time Rao drove us back to the office, it was already late. The city outside was quiet, but in my head, I still heard the fire, the breaking glass, and the cold words in the notebook. Resolve the burden before October. As soon as the office door locked behind us, Rao placed the fireproof bag on the table and looked at me. "Now it's time to see what we really have." Liam was exhausted, crawling onto the sofa in the corner and curling up in the thin blanket. I pulled it up to his chest, kissed his forehead, then returned to the desk. Rao took each item out: the cash, the SIM cards, the burner phone burned on one corner, the stack of debt papers, and finally, the brown leather notebook. She opened it, and I sat across from her, no longer able to cry, but my heart tightening every time I saw Darius's familiar handwriting. The first page, plan, resolve the burden before October. Below it were short, clear lines. 5,000, deposit for M. 2,500, first payment for the handling team. Meet M at the parking lot behind the old gas station, 9 p.m. Rao turned to the next page. Each page looked like a detailed project plan. Dates, meeting locations, amounts paid, notes, keep quiet, avoid cameras, nothing vague. Darius recorded everything as if he were managing a project, not hiring people to kill his wife and child. In the middle of the notebook, a line was underlined. Scenario, fire, the perfect accident. Under it were bullet points. Choose weekend. Neighbors pay less attention. Start fire in living room near outlet. Easy to blame electrical short. Make sure wife and kid are home. Use sleeping pills if needed. I fly to another state before 7 p.m. Have email confirmation witnesses. Return as grieving husband, father. The more Rao read, the colder I felt. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a deliberate murder plan, handwritten and calculated step by step. On the page margin was a smaller line. Remind them, leave no survivors. I swallowed hard. No more tears, only a raw sting in my chest. Rao flipped ahead. The last pages were short scribbles, messier, as if written in a hurry. Reconfirm insurance policy, full payout if death by fire. The more the house burns, the fewer questions. Then the line that made my breath stop. The boy must go too. Don't leave problems behind. I stared at the 4 words, the boy must go, still irrationally hoping I had read wrong. But the words stayed there, straight, clear, cold. Darius didn't just leave Liam to die in the fire. He planned for it, accepted it as part of the conditions. I inhaled, murmuring almost to myself, he wrote it down. Rao gently closed the notebook, pushed it aside, then picked up the burner phone. Now for the rest. She plugged the phone into her laptop. The device powered on despite the burned casing. After a moment, the message log appeared. Many unfamiliar numbers saved lazily as M.T. driver. Rao opened M. A string of short messages. Darius, do it fast and clean that night. No survivors. M. Just let them sleep. They won't know anything. Darius, check to make sure neighbors don't suspect. The closer to the day of the fire, the more specific it became. The message from the morning of the incident. Darius, tonight. I fly at 7. Wait until they're asleep. No survivors, not even the boy. My throat tightened. It wasn't Liam's assumption. It wasn't a child overhearing. Darius had written clearly, not even the boy. Rao shut the screen so I wouldn't have to stare any longer. Legally, this is extremely serious, she said, but I want a criminal investigator to give his assessment. She made a call. I only heard fragments of it. She mentioned my father, mentioned evidence evidence of a murder for insurance plan. About an hour later, a man arrived at the office. He introduced himself. I'm Hendrix Walker, private investigator, formerly with the State Investigative Division. Carlton told me about your case. He shook my hand, his eyes direct, his voice straightforward. Rao laid out the notebook, the debt papers, and the laptop, summarizing everything again. Walker read every line carefully. He didn't comment much, just nodded or frowned occasionally. Finally, he looked up. In terms of evidence, he said slowly, we have a handwritten plan, payment transactions to the hired group, messages showing clear intent to kill his wife and child, context, the fire, his trip out of state, the high-value life insurance. He looked at me. With this, we can absolutely build a serious criminal case. Not just at the state level, federal involvement is possible because this includes insurance fraud and organized crime. I thought relief would come. Instead, I mostly felt tired. Tired because the evidence in front of me both helped me and shattered the image of the man I lived with for 8 years. Rao asked, but there's still risk, right? Walker nodded. Someone like Darius will hire an excellent lawyer. They'll say the notebook is just fantasy written under stress. No direct action taken yet. They'll try to separate him from the arsonists, argue that they acted beyond the agreement, claim he had never intended to kill his family. I cut in, my voice hoarse. But he wrote no survivors. Not even the boy. Walker nodded. Yes, it's very strong. But a skilled lawyer will still twist it. Talk about threats from debt collectors, impaired judgment, psychological stress. If we only rely on documents and messages, there's enough gray area for them to create doubt. He leaned back, speaking clearly. What we need is a mistake from Darius himself, an action, a sentence, a reaction that shows he knew it was arson, knew it was planned, something he doesn't have time to polish. I looked at Rao. She stayed quiet as if she already knew what Walker would propose. How do we get that? I asked. Walker didn't circle around it. We make him reveal it, not by confronting him openly with the police, but by letting him believe that you are still within his grasp. Frowned. What do you mean? Right now, Walker said, Darius sees 2 possibilities. 1, you and Liam are dead. Everything went according to plan. 2, he's starting to doubt it because there are no bodies and his men reported the safe was opened. When he becomes certain you're alive and have the documents, he'll panic. Panic makes people try to regain control, negotiate, threaten, manipulate, and the person he's been manipulating for years is you. I started to understand. A wave of discomfort rose in me. You want me to contact him? Walker nodded. Yes, but not as a woman who's fully awakened and ready to send him to prison. As the desperate wife who wants answers, wants to keep the family together, afraid of scandal. He explained clearly. If you text him aggressively or threateningly, he'll shut down, call a lawyer and say nothing. But if you act weak, confused, wanting one last conversation, he'll lower his guard. He'll say things closer to the truth, reveal what he thinks about the accidental fire, the men he hired, the plan. Rao added, we won't let Avery be alone. The call or messages will be recorded. If there's a meeting afterward, it will be in public, with Walker's people watching and recording. But the first move must come from Avery's text. I looked at my phone on the table. Darius had been texting nonstop since last night. I tried not to read them, but I still saw the previews flash by. Where are you? I'm worried sick. Answer me. I'm losing my mind. A part of me felt disgusted. Another part, honestly, still trembled at the thought of facing him, even through a few typed words. If I text him, I said slowly, what do I say? Walker answered immediately. You will say exactly 2 things. 1, that you're alive, hiding with Liam. 2, that you have seen part of what was in the safe, but you don't understand all of it yet. You want to hear his explanation because you don't want to expose family matters to outsiders. He paused, looking straight at me. The wording can be adjusted, but the core is this. Make him think you are still the wife you used to be, the woman afraid of scandal, afraid of breaking the family, willing to sit and listen to his excuses. Rao looked at me, her voice gentle but firm. Avery, only you can play this role. Darius is used to seeing you soft. This time, that softness will be the trap. I stayed silent for a moment. In my mind, I saw Liam holding me during the night of the fire, the notebook with the line, "The boy must go." I thought about this. If we stayed silent, if we did nothing, would Darius stop? Or one day, would he find another way to finish it? I picked up my phone. The screen was still lit, a long list of unread messages from Darius sitting there. I scrolled quickly to the bottom, my hand slightly shaking but my eyes clearer. "Okay," I said, this time not asking anything. "Help me draft the message. I'll send it." I paused, adding one more sentence. "But from this moment on, I'm no longer his real wife. I'm only acting one last time." Rao nodded. Walker nodded too, satisfied that the crucial piece had been secured. On the table, the brown leather notebook still lay there. For the first time in years, I looked at Darius's handwriting without seeing the man I once loved. I only saw the true face of someone who planned to kill his wife and child, and I knew the next part of this story would be the moment he faced what he wrote with his own hand. The night before, I drafted a short message exactly as Walker instructed. "Meet me at Freedom Grove Park at 10 a.m. alone." In less than 10 seconds, Darius replied, "I'll be there. Everything is just a misunderstanding." Walker saw the reply and said only, "Good, he won't have time to prepare." The next morning, I wore a shirt with a recording device attached. Walker placed his team throughout the park. A bird feeder, a jogger, a couple arguing, a maintenance worker, all undercover officers. I was told not to look around too much so I wouldn't give anything away. I sat on the exact bench we'd agreed on. At 10, Darius walked toward me. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red from lack of sleep, but his posture was still calculating. He sat down and spoke quietly. "Avery, you're really alive. God, I thought..." I cut him off. "You thought the fire had taken care of everything?" Darius froze for half a second. "You're being manipulated by someone. You don't know what I've been through." I placed the photocopied page on my lap, not letting him touch it. "Perfect accident. Living room first. Make sure the wife and the boy are both home. Explain that." Darius glanced down, then instantly looked up again, changing his tone. "You don't understand what's happening. I owed money. I was cornered. I was trying to protect you and Liam. They took advantage of me." I said directly, "Then why did you text, 'Don't let anyone survive'?" Darius swallowed, then pressed through his teeth. "You have no idea what you're ruining. Everything was planned so no one would suspect anything. You went through my things. You took papers. You ran. You've destroyed the entire plan." I left space for him to expose himself further. "Everything. What plan?" I asked. Darius snapped. "You ruined my plan. From beginning to end, I just needed everything to pass as an accident. If you had stayed quiet, it would have been done." That was the signal Walker needed. I heard a tiny radio crackle somewhere far behind. I stayed calm. "So you admit it?" "Avery, don't talk like that. You don't know what I had to do to get out." I tilted my head. "By burning the house while your wife and child were asleep?" Darius clenched his hands, his face twisted, half angry, half confused. "I did everything for another chance at life. I had no other way left." I didn't respond, but several passers-by quietly stood up, moving toward us in the predetermined pattern. A calm, male voice spoke behind me. "Darius Morgan, please stand up and put your hands forward. We need to speak with you." Darius turned around. His eyes darted, realizing the people around him were no longer just park visitors. I saw a flash of panic cross his face. "Who are you? I didn't do anything." Darius stepped back. Walker held out his badge. "Special Investigations Unit. You are suspected of involvement in arson, conspiracy to cause serious harm, and coordinating hired individuals to endanger human life. Stay calm." "No, you have no evidence," Darius shouted. I spoke each word clearly. "We do. The notebook and the burner phone you hid." Darius looked at me like he wanted to tear me apart, then turned to run. 2 officers lunged, but he dodged too quickly. I stood up abruptly, not fast enough to move aside before he turned back, grabbed my arm, and yanked me close. A thin knife pressed against my neck. "Back off, all of you," he screamed. The officers froze. Walker lifted both hands. "Darius, don't do this. Put the knife down. No one wants to shoot you." "Shut up." Darius yelled. "She's coming with me. Nobody moves." I felt the blade press a little deeper, but I kept my voice steady. "You're not going to do it. You've never done anything yourself. You always hire someone else." Darius flinched, an instinctive reaction. That split second was enough. A short, sharp crack rang out. Darius screamed, dropping the knife. He grabbed his wrist, blood trickling. Officers immediately pinned him to the ground, handcuffing him. I was pulled backward. Darius was still shouting, "You'll all pay! Avery, say something! You know I didn't mean—" I watched as he was shoved face down on the concrete, legs kicking uselessly. No confidence left, no calm, no charming mask he used to fool everyone. A female officer read the rights. "You have the right to remain silent." Darius looked around, seeing everyone staring at him. No sympathy, no surprise, only the eyes of people witnessing the bare truth of who he really was. I stood still. No mercy, no explanation, no stepping in. In that moment, I realized, from now on, I don't belong to fear anymore. Walker approached, his voice steady and sure. "You did very well, Avery. Everything he said was recorded. He's not getting out of this." I only nodded. There was nothing more to say. Darius was dragged past me, still yelling, "Avery, you'll regret this. Listen to me." I turned away. He no longer had the right to touch a single second of my life. For the first time in years, I saw Darius completely powerless. No control, no excuses, no chance to perform as the doting husband. Only the truth, and the truth finally stood on its own. Darius's arrest right there in the park immediately opened the path for a federal investigation. The evidence from the safe, the burner phone, and the notebook was submitted to the prosecutor the same day. Walker said briefly, "With this much, he's not getting out." Right after, a wider search warrant was issued. Investigators collected more bank transaction data, credit card statements, life insurance records, and loan records in Darius's name. Everything matched the notebook entries. The two hired men were arrested early the next morning. One of them confessed immediately. He gave us the house key. He said his wife and kid would definitely be home that night. He said make it look like an electrical short. He paid half up front. The rest after the insurance payout. The statement was fully recorded with a court-appointed attorney present. The prosecution kept everything. Darius's lawyer immediately requested a meeting to negotiate. Rao said plainly, "No amount of money can undo what he did." They were forced to bring the case to trial. The trial opened within 2 months. Darius appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, hair trimmed, face tight with tension. His legal team argued mental instability, pressure from criminal groups, and requested a psychological evaluation. The prosecutor read a list of 14 charges aloud to the entire courtroom. First-degree attempted murder, 2 counts of intentional arson, insurance fraud, federal conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, association with organized crime, asset concealment, witness intimidation, and several smaller counts. Darius's lawyers fought back. Our client was under financial duress, psychologically unstable, and threatened. The notes in the notebook were imagination, not actual conduct. The prosecutor displayed the text messages on the large screen. "Don't let anyone survive, not even the boy." The courtroom went silent. A financial expert testified next. He laid out every transaction, every cash withdrawal, every deposit into underground casinos. Most of the money flowed from the family joint account to Darius's personal accounts, then into intermediary accounts used by criminal groups. "This is not the behavior of someone coerced," he concluded. "This is a deliberate, months-long operation." A representative from the insurance company testified afterward. He was the one who asked to raise his wife's life insurance payout from $1 million to $2,800,000, and he asked very detailed questions about payout procedures for deaths involving fire. The prosecutor asked, did he seem frightened or coerced during these conversations? No, he was calm, asked many technical questions, not someone being cornered. The second hired man, the one waiting outside the night of the fire, was called to testify as well. He said, he told us his wife was weak, slept easily. The kid wouldn't run in time. He just needed us to do the rest. Darius's attorney tried. "You could be lying to reduce your sentence?" He answered, "I'll take responsibility for what I did." But he gave the key. He set the timing. He chose the day. "I don't need to make things up. I only had to testify once." Rao instructed me to keep my statement brief. The prosecutor, "Can you recount the night of the incident?" I gave a short version. Liam's warning, the sound of the door opening, the smell of gasoline, the fire, the message, "Sleep well, you two," and how I had to hide in the dark watching my own house burn. His attorney asked, "Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" In a state of panic, memory can be distorted. I replied, "The court doesn't need an explanation of my emotions. The court only needs the truth of what I saw." No one mentioned bringing Liam to testify. He was too young. It wasn't necessary. A psychologist appeared at Darius's request. He talked about stress, financial crisis, disordered state. The prosecutor asked exactly one question. "At any point, did you see the defendant lose the ability to distinguish right from wrong?" The doctor was silent for a few seconds, then said, "No." At that point, the defense strategy was nearly collapsing. His attorney shifted to a different angle. Our client did not want to harm his wife and child. He only wanted to stage a fire to collect insurance money. The hired men went too far. The prosecutor responded by playing the arsonist's recorded statement, "Don't let anyone survive. There are 2 people in the house. Do it fast. Leave no trace." No one said anything further. On the sentencing day, the courtroom was unusually quiet. I was not present. I sat in Rao's office watching the live broadcast. Liam was in the next room playing with her son. The judge read the sentence. The defendant, Darius Morgan, is sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, not eligible for early parole. All major charges are upheld. Court adjourned. There was no applause, no protest, only his attorney standing to request the right to appeal. The judge nodded, expression unchanged. Walker called me. "He has no room to maneuver. Even if he appeals, it won't reduce much. You and Liam are safe now." I answered, "I understand." Rao placed a photocopy of the ruling in front of me. "It's over, Avery. From here on, your life belongs to you and your son." That evening, I put Liam to bed. I said briefly, "The court ruled. Your father will be gone for a very long time." Liam asked, "Will we ever see him again?" I shook my head. "No, you don't need to." He nodded softly, not scared, not shaken, just calm, as if he finally understood that the worst had passed. I turned off the lights. The room was silent. No crackling fire, no door bursting open, no footsteps of a stranger. Only the breathing of the child I had protected by every possible means. A dark chapter had closed, by law, by truth, by evidence that could not be denied. And the next chapter, the one without Darius, finally began. After the trial, I started putting the rest of my life back together as quickly as I could. The house had turned to ash. All documents, belongings, memories were gone. I went with Rao to the social services office to complete temporary assistance paperwork. A week later, I found a small rental house in a quiet neighborhood in Matthews. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a front yard just big enough for Liam to plant a few pots of flowers. There wasn't much to move in. A few donated clothes, a cheap wooden bed, a used dining table from a secondhand store. But the house had solid locks, bright windows, and friendly neighbors. That was enough. Liam began therapy every Monday. During the first session, he said nothing, but by the 3rd week, he started speaking a little. His therapist told me, "The key is a safe environment. Your son is recovering at the right pace." I nodded. Nothing more needed to be said. I joined a support group for women experiencing domestic violence at Rao's suggestion. There, I met many people with stories more horrifying than I imagined. When it was my turn to speak, everyone listened without interrupting, without asking uncomfortable questions. An older woman held my hand and said, "You survived. Now you can help others." After the meeting, the group coordinator invited me to volunteer as a support worker. I was surprised. I've never done this kind of work. She replied, "You don't need experience. You only need your own truth. From then on, I spent several days a week answering calls on the hotline. Many women called in panic. Many just needed to hear the words, "You're not alone." I said that sentence many times. One day, Rao visited my home. She looked around the small room and said, "Avery, I don't think you're just a survivor. You have a very clear way of arguing, of asking questions, of defending your point. You should consider studying law." I laughed. "I'm 34, starting almost from nothing. Isn't it too late to study law?" "It's not too late," Rao answered. "You have motivation many students don't. You understand the value of justice through your own experience." She placed the application packet for an evening pre-law program at a community college in front of me. "You don't have to decide now, but I think you should try." That evening, I opened the first page of the introductory law book she gave me. Liam sat beside me, doing his math homework. We were both silent, each pursuing our own goal but sharing the same old table. The following week, I applied. During the interview, the instructor asked, "Why do you want to study law?" I replied simply, "Because I know what happens when women don't have a voice of their own." He nodded. "That's enough." On the first night of class, I felt a little out of place seeing most students nearly a decade younger than me. But the instructor began with, "Here, age gives neither advantage nor disadvantage. Knowledge is where everything begins." I opened my notebook and wrote down every line. Our lives gradually stabilized. During the day, I worked part-time at Rao's office, helping organize files, answering calls, learning to draft basic forms. In the evening, I attended class. I came home close to 10, but I still read a few more pages before sleeping. Even though he was young, Liam understood the new schedule. "When you finish school, what will you do?" he asked. "I want to help people like me." "Like Ms. Rao?" "Something like that." He just nodded and said, "I'll do my homework next to you so you won't be lonely." From then on, every night he pulled up a chair beside me, reading or coloring. About 6 months later, I was officially invited to work part-time as a legal assistant. Rao said, "I'm not giving you special treatment. You're good at this, that's all." I thanked her, not for the job, but because she showed me I could go farther than I ever thought. Liam began sleeping better, the nightmares almost gone. I no longer flinched at every sound near the door. The mornings when the two of us had breakfast in the small kitchen, sunlight hitting the table, they were simple but unmistakably peaceful. One evening, while I was preparing class notes, Liam suddenly said, "Mom, I think our house is safe now." I turned to him. "Why do you think so?" "Because I don't hear Dad anymore." I gently squeezed his shoulder. No explanations, no corrections, just accepting that he had come a long way. A year after moving, I spoke at a conference on domestic violence prevention. When I finished, a young woman came to me, eyes filled with tears. "Because of you, I had the courage to leave last night. If you could do it, I can too." That was all I needed to hear. That night, I came home late. Liam was already asleep. I set my bag on the table and looked around the small house. Not luxurious, not fully furnished, but everything in it was my choice. I sat down, opened my book, and continued writing my essay for constitutional law class. Every line, every note, every recorded lecture reminded me that this new life was moving in the right direction. No more shouting, no more threats, no lingering smell of smoke in my memory. Only the two of us, and a path opening ahead. A life rebuilt from ruins, but steady, clear, and determined by me alone. It was the first time in years that I understood what peace truly meant. 3 years passed faster than I expected. Studying law, nights staying up until 2 a.m. taking notes, the internships, assisting Rao, all of it added up to an opportunity I never imagined I would have. The morning I received the exam results, I opened my email in the small kitchen. Only one line. "Congratulations, you passed." I froze for a few seconds. No crying, no cheering. I just exhaled hard, closed the laptop, and picked up the phone to call Rao. I passed. I knew you would, Rao replied. Come to the office tomorrow to complete the onboarding. We have work to do. The next day, I officially signed with Rao and Associates as a new attorney. No big celebration, no party. Rao simply handed me a file. Your first case. A mother of 2. Abusive husband, restraining order violated. You'll come with me for the interview. I nodded. The first case led to the second, then the third. Most of them were women facing financial control, threats, manipulation, or stalking. Many brought their children, holding them tight as if they were the only solid thing left. During consultations, when they said, I don't know where to go, he said, if I leave, I'm scared my kids will be hurt. I responded with short, clear sentences, just as Rao taught me, we'll protect you. There are legal ways to stop him. You and your children are not alone. No one in the room knew my past except Rao and Walker, but every time I said, you're not alone, I knew the words were not only for them, they were also for the version of me 3 years ago, the one who sat trembling in the night watching my house burn. Liam is now 12. He's taller, his voice deeper, his eyes steadier. He no longer panics at loud noises or startles when someone knocks. He still goes to therapy once a month as part of his recovery, but the doctor says he has surpassed expectations. One afternoon, I came home from work and saw Liam wrapping a small gift box. What's that, sweetheart? I asked. Liam handed me the box. A gift for you. Congratulations on becoming a lawyer. I opened it. Inside was a metal keychain shaped like a book. Engraved on it were the words, for the strongest woman I know, Liam. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. Liam looked at me and smiled. You know, I'm really proud of you, Mom. I placed the gift on my desk. Simple, but probably the most valuable thing I had ever received. Work at Rao's office grew heavier. I handled cases involving women and children, exactly the group I understood best. Not because I wanted to revisit my past, but because I had an advantage. I recognized signs of abuse even when the victim didn't say them out loud. I knew when they were hiding something, when they wanted to withdraw a report but were actually terrified. One day, Rao called me into the conference room. Avery, would you be interested in leading the training session for the volunteer group? Me? Yes, you're persuasive, and you understand how to talk to women who are being controlled. I accepted. During the first training session, I stood in front of about 30 volunteers. I didn't tell my story in detail. I only used real situations, steps for processing cases, templates for restraining orders, and how to contact shelters. I spoke slowly, clearly, without dramatizing anything. At the end of the session, a middle-aged woman came to me. You speak differently from the lawyers I've met. Shorter, more decisive, I replied. Because I know delays sometimes cost lives. She stayed silent for a moment, then nodded firmly as if something finally made sense to her. A year later, I was assigned the most complex case. A mother and her 9-year-old daughter who had fled from another state. The husband was hunting them, had money, had connections, and was extremely dangerous. Rao said, I want you to take this. You handle crises well. We met the mother and daughter in a shelter. The little girl held her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide and alert. The mother spoke softly. I don't know who to trust anymore. I handed her my office card. Start with me. We immediately filed for protective orders, coordinated with local police, and arranged to transfer the case across state lines. During that time, I prepared the documents for the court to issue temporary orders as fast as possible. 3 weeks later, the court approved a long-term restraining order. The mother hugged her child, and the little girl turned to me. What do you do for work? I smiled. I protect people like you and your mom. That was the moment I understood that everything I had gone through wasn't only to survive. It was so I could stand where I stood that day. One late evening, while I was preparing a presentation for a legal conference, Liam walked over and leaned against the doorway. Mom, are you tired? A little, I said, but I'm okay. Why aren't you asleep? Liam came closer and looked at the stack of documents. "You've helped so many people. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do." I looked at him. 3 years earlier, he used to hide behind my back in fear. Now he was the one reminding me of the purpose I was following. "Changed a lot too, Liam, because you're strong, so I know I'll be okay too." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just placed my hand on his head. Looking back, I realized something I had never said out loud. I was becoming the person I had needed that night at the airport, the night the house burned, the night I first hid in Rao's office. Someone who knows how to listen, someone who knows the law, someone who knows when to say, "Leave now," and someone who stands in the dark and lights the way out for others. On the day I signed the contract to officially become an associate attorney at the firm, Rao said to me, "You've gone far beyond anything Dale ever hoped for, and I think he would be proud." I replied, "I'm only trying not to waste the opportunity he left for me." Rao smiled, "No, you're creating opportunities for others." My new life didn't have dramatic or glamorous moments. It only had long workdays, late nights of studying, thick case files, and the sound of Liam's footsteps in the hallway of our small home. But it was what I chose, what I built, what I protected. I knew I had stepped out of the darkness, and I knew I would help pull many others out with me, because if I could survive, they could too. And that was the only promise I wanted to keep forever. 5 years after the fire, my sons and my life had changed so much that if I didn't look back at the old legal documents, I might not believe what we had lived through. The small rental house had been replaced by a light blue home I bought with my own savings, and a support grant for attorneys specializing in domestic violence cases. The house wasn't big, but it was bright, safe, and quiet enough that every morning I heard Liam calling Mom instead of the sound of fire alarms. Liam was 13, almost up to my shoulder, smiling often, and fond of saying, "Mom, I can do it myself, don't worry." He still saw a therapist every 3 months as a mental health checkup. His nightmares had gone from weekly to only a few times a year, and then almost disappeared. The therapist said, "Stability is the best medicine. Your son is on the right track." I nodded. No further explanation needed. 3 times a week, I led the victim support group at the community center. The women who came all shared something in common: cautious eyes, soft voices, and hands gripping their bags as if that was the only thing they still controlled. I didn't tell my story right away. I just sat beside them, offered water, and let them choose their own moment to speak. One Friday afternoon, the center was busier than usual. A young woman sat across from me, shaking so much she had to hold her cup with both hands. When I asked, "Are you safe now?" she only nodded and then burst into tears. I handed her tissues and said simply, "We start from here. You already did the hardest part, stepping out." That sentence wasn't poetic encouragement. It was a truth I had once learned with my own life. At the end of October, right after I finished a meeting with the federal attorneys about expanding a hotline for minors, Liam stood at the office door. "Mom, are you done?" I packed the files, locked the cabinet, and walked outside with him. The late afternoon sun lit the freshly cut grass, and he carried 2 cups of homemade juice. We had barely sat on the wooden steps when Liam suddenly asked, "Are you happy, Mom?" I turned to look at him. It wasn't a random question from a kid. He meant it seriously, like he needed to be sure of something. I answered with the simplest truth. "I am, more than I ever thought I could be." Liam nodded, smiled, and rested his head on my shoulder for a moment. He didn't say anything else, but I understood. He just needed to know I was okay, and that allowed him to grow up without fearing the past coming back. My first case of the new year was protecting a mother of 2 who was being threatened by her husband. When I stood in court, I didn't shake anymore. I no longer felt like a victim trying to regain balance. I stated each clause clearly, cited each statute, filed for an emergency protective order, and presented the recorded evidence. The judge asked, "Attorney me, Avery, what do you propose to ensure the safety of the 2 children? I answered immediately. Transfer them to a shelter within 24 hours and request that the court allow police checks whenever needed during the first 30 days. When the hearing ended, the mother hugged me and said something I never forgot. If I had met someone like you earlier, I wouldn't have been afraid for so long. I only replied, well, you've met me now, and I won't let anyone hurt you again. My life stayed busy, but it no longer felt like running. I knew I had passed the darkest point of my life when I could name everything calmly without avoiding it, without trembling. One evening, while I was reviewing materials for a seminar, Liam came in and placed his hand on my shoulder. Mom, if you hadn't run back then, I don't know where we'd be now. But I did run, I said. And now we're here. I think you're stronger than anyone I know. I only did what I had to do, Liam. No, you did more than that. I looked at my son, the boy who once clung to me in fear at the airport, now standing steady in front of me, peaceful and grounded. I realized something I had never said aloud. I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore because I had walked through it once and I knew the way out. In the 5th year after the tragedy, I organized a gathering for the victim support group. For the first time, I told my story fully, without avoiding anything. When I finished, the room was silent for a few seconds. Then one woman stood and clapped. Then another and another, until the entire room stood. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. I just bowed my head in thanks. At that moment, I understood that my story no longer belonged only to me. It belonged to every woman searching for a way out. I knew there would always be someone who needed to hear it, and I was ready to tell it whenever needed. Thank you for staying with me to these final lines. I don't know where you're from, what stage of life you're in, or whether you've ever faced darkness. But thank you for taking the time to listen to the story of a mother who almost lost everything. If you have thoughts, memories, or anything you want to share, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your story. And if you'd like to join me on future journeys, remember to like, subscribe, and follow so you won't miss any upcoming stories. Thank you sincerely. I wish you peace always.